Hi, and welcome everyone to Whole Soul School and Foundation's Fireside Chats for the month of May 2019. I'm Marie Mohler, and I'm an author, intuitive, and co-founder of Whole Soul School and Foundation. I am here with my co-host, Lacy Frazer, who is a clinical psychologist by training and a practicing life and leadership coach and consultant today. Lacy is also a co-founder of Whole Soul School and Foundation. Welcome, Lacy.
Hi, Marie.
Hi. Today we will be discussing the topic of energy and the law of attraction. At the heart of everything is energy. And so there could not be a more timely and essential conversation to have right now than one about energy and how we interact with it and engage it every day. So stay with us. We have some great insights and resources to share with you today, for we know that the topic of energy creates a bridge for our listeners, where we will journey a few stepping stones further down the path of personal transformation together now, because we are engaging, activating, and opening an inner awareness and conversation about the possibility that the world we live in may offer a bigger picture and a broader perspective of this world and our place and personal experience in it. So, Lacy, why don't you go ahead and get us started on this very important topic of energy today?
Well, thank you, Marie, for that introduction. And yes, energy, the topic of energy is probably one of the most profound and important topics that I think we can have a conversation about, because I believe that energy organizes all things. Energy is running through our body at all times, and that we live in an energetic universe. And I want to talk about all of those things today. But first, I do think it's important to let our listeners know that you and I are not quantum physicists. We are not electricians. We are not scientists in that way. So there may be things that we talk about today that are not maybe 100% accurate from a scientific perspective, but from an energetic and spiritual perspective, this is what we know and what we have learned. So I just wanted to make that clear from the get-go. So what I want to do today is I want to kind of break our conversation into sort of three sections. I want to talk about sort of the proof that we are energetic beings, that we have energy running through us all the time. And then I want to talk about the proof that we live in an energetic universe. And then I want to talk about probably what's most important here is, once we've established that we're energetic beings and that we live in an energetic universe, that we have the power within ourselves to manage that energy that is running through us, to manage the quality of the energy that we are putting out into the world. And also in doing so, we are having more, I don't like the word control, but we are able to create a different reality for ourselves using the electromagnetic nature of energy. And I want to talk about that and some of the different modalities that exist out there in the world of energy medicine and alternative medicine that are all about working with the energy field. So first, let's talk a little bit about the fact that we are energetic beings. And what I mean by that is we have electricity running through our body all the time. And there's evidence of that. We can probably cite several examples, but I'd like just to review for some of those people out there who may not understand what I'm talking about. I want to talk about proof that we are electrical beings. Okay, so one thing I always think of when I talk about this is the fact that when I was a kid and I used to rub a balloon on my, you remember when we used to rub balloons on our head?
Totally.
At birthday parties, and then we'd be able to stick them onto the wall, right?
Right.
And that friction created from the balloon and our body was clearly electrical in nature and magnetic in nature, as it allowed the balloon to stick to the wall. It was sort of magic. It was always such an illusion,
Right.
As a kid, it was really magical. And then also we've got, remember the kids who are sliding down the slides in the playgrounds, and they come out the other end of the tunnel and their hair is standing on end, right?
Exactly.
That's example of electricity. And probably one of the most profound examples of ourselves as electrical beings is the EKG, which is when if anybody has ever experienced heart pain and you go to the doctor, they don't slice your chest open to look at your heart and see what's happening in there. They put what are called electrodes, patches with wires connected to it. And those wires are measuring the electrical impulses of the heart. They are measuring what's going on inside of your chest cavity. And that it feeds the information to a machine, which spits it out on a screen, and the doctor can know more about what's going on. So that's pretty amazing when you think about it. We don't stop long enough and pause to think about some of these things and how amazing they really are and what they suggest. To have heart pain and to not have to see the heart, but we use our electrical being nature to understand what's going on there is very powerful, I think.
It is.
And then, of course, there's the shock that we've experienced, when you touch somebody inadvertently and you experience a shock, right?
Right.
So all of these are sort of examples that there's just no doubt that there's electricity running through us all the time, in and out, in and out, in and out. And we'll talk about sort of how that really works in a minute. But I didn't know if you had any other examples or anything to add to that.
No, well, I would just add that, again, a lot of what we've been talking about here at Whole Soul School and Foundation, and especially today with energy, is that we are talking about witnessing, or even with the EKG, they're measuring something that appears invisible until there's a method in some way or an action or activity that makes the invisible visible. And energy in our universe essentially does that, and I know we're going to talk more about that today.
No, but it's a really, really important point because energy, for the most part, is invisible until it becomes physically visible, such as the examples I've just given. But you can, I also often cite the microwave example, where you put food into the microwave and you turn it on and it comes out hot. But there was no fire inside of that microwave, right? So clearly there was something going on in there that heated up the food, and that's energy.
Yes.
Obviously, we get electricity through our power outlets in our home. We've now tapped into the sun to create solar energy. And
Wi-Fi. I mean, there's many other technological advances where we are utilizing a form of energy and connection, electricity, but in many cases we don't see that.
Right.
We're not seeing what actually powers those things, but yet it still exists, and yet it's still true.
And it's not only exists and it's still true, but it is really the source of the creation of our own experience of reality. And that's a deep thought and a deep concept.
Yeah.
And I want to talk a little bit about why that is in a little bit. But again, the first thing here is just to simply share with our listeners that there's very obvious evidence that we are electrical in nature. Okay. And now I'd like to kind of move into talking about the power of energy and there are many scientists out there, quantum physicists, who study energy and our universe as energy. So we have energy running through our body, but we're also interacting every moment of every day with the universal energies. And for those who had a chance to read my May blog, so every month I write a blog that starts our month off and introduces our topic for the month. And I wrote about the work by Masaru Emoto, who wrote a book called Hidden Messages in Water. And why this is such an important part of the conversation is his experiments. He was a Japanese scientist who did a number of experiments on water. And he became very well known for them because of the impact they have on our knowledge and our wisdom about energy. So essentially what he did was he filled a room with bottled water. He filled 2 rooms with bottled water. And in one room, he exposed the water to positive intention, positive words. He spoke to the water, loving, kindness, compassion. He wrapped the bottled water with pieces of paper with words like love and forgiveness, and joy and happiness. He left the windows open in the room so there was light and it was airy. And then in the second room, he wrapped the bottles in pieces of paper that had negative language, hateful language. He spoke to the water. He would go into the room in different increments and speak to the water very negatively. He would have the blinds drawn so it was a dark room. And he did this repeatedly. So essentially, he had a room where he influenced the water in a variety of positive ways and through positive words and positive feelings.
Yes.
And in the second room, he exposed the water to negative words and negative feelings.
Yeah.
And then throughout a certain time frame, he would collect samples of the water molecules and he put it under a high-powered microscope and would take pictures of the water molecules over time as they were exposed to these different conditions. And what he found was that the water molecules that were exposed to the positivity essentially were nearly perfect. And the water molecules that he exposed to negativity became crippled. Some of them darkened, broke off, and were disfigured. And some might even say diseased.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the power of that, he was really demonstrating the power of our words, the energy of our words, the power of our feeling, the energy of our feeling, and its impact on the molecular structure of water.
Wow.
So something that's really important, this is where I really go, wow, is when we acknowledge that 75% of our body
is water. Right?
So
Yes.
what is happening to the water molecules in our body, which is 75% of our body, when we are being repeatedly exposed to positive or negative stimuli? Okay, so when I think about if, people who grow up in abusive households or are repeatedly belittled or shamed or neglected or physically abused or sexually abused, just negative experience after negative experience.
Or just having an inner critic inside yourself that... Right?
That's what I was going to say. I mean, or have the thought processes that are self-critical, that are self-sabotaging, that, because we all go through that and have that. And how is that impacting that 75% body of water?
Yes.
Inside of us, and
it's pretty profound.
It is, and I think it is. I would say this is totally a Lacy Frazer interpretation, but I imagine that a lot of disease is caused by this in some way, shape, or form.
Unknowingly, on a lot of people's parts. We don't know. We're not raised in most of the world culture to believe that our thoughts are creating anything. Right? Because there's this invisible force of energy, and we don't really acknowledge that very much in our lives. And then that invisible force of energy is interacting with our energy all the time. So, yeah. And so when we're 75% water, there's this continuous conversation that's going on at this sub-detectable level inside people all the time.
Yeah.
And we're just not aware of the impact it's having in creating our lives. But this is one of the amazing researchers and this evidence that Dr. Emoto found, where to me, Lacy, he literally did this experiment and created conditions where some water was exposed to goodness and love and light and kindness, and he nurtured that energy in that room in a lot of different ways, but that's what he was doing. He was nurturing energy in that room, and the water was experiencing that energy. And then in the other room, he was creating the conditions on the other side of that, on the polar opposite of that spectrum. And he was angry or cursing at the water, and keeping it in darkness, writing out a lot of negative emotions and negative thoughts, and expressing that in that room. He created the condition of negativity and negative emotion in that room. Much like many of us, some of us have, childhoods where we were nurtured in light, to some degree, and some of us have childhoods where we didn't get as much of that, and we lived and were raised in a greater darkness. And you see what his experiment produced in terms of his results and his evidence. Repeatedly over time, he was able to replicate the results again and again. And so if we apply that to ourselves, like what you're saying, and we're 75% water or more, that we are a living experiment.
Yes.
In a way, what Dr. Emoto was doing was showing us that reality, that we are that very same energy, and the thoughts and feelings and emotions that we're experiencing on a daily basis, whether we know it or not, is impacting our own molecular structure.
Yes.
And is impacting the lives we're presently creating. So he's one of the scientists in the world who was able to actually demonstrate this principle and this truth, that energy is everywhere, energy is everything, and energy is communicating with us all the time, whether we're aware of it or not.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I find it so powerful and so profound, and his work is one of many people's work demonstrating the power of positive and negative energy on our bodies.
Yes.
So, we talked a little bit about the fact that we are electrical beings. We talked about the fact that we clearly can see that our thoughts and our emotions are impacted by energy outside of ourselves, as well as thoughts and emotions that we experience internally within ourselves.
Yes.
I think it's important to talk a little bit about how the energy runs through our bodies. I always think about, you remember in the doctor's office there was that poster on the wall of the skeleton, and it had all the muscles and the veins and everything. In every doctor's office. And I think about our body. Actually, the one poster that's always missing from the doctor's office is the poster of our bodies and our meridian system, which is the system of tunnels and much like veins that carry energy through our
conduits
body.
Of energy.
Exactly. They are the conduits of energy. And if our body is 75% water, and what is one of the number one properties of water is that it conducts electricity, right?
Yes.
So we've got the water conducting electricity. We've got our meridian system that is transmitting and conducting the electricity throughout the body. And scientists are really honing in on this now, and it's very, very, very powerful. And one modality that we may talk about a little bit later, I just want to bring it up because we're talking about meridians, is this concept of acupuncture, which has been around for a long time.
Yes.
And essentially, acupuncture is about using these very, very thin needles to tap into those meridians, and largely they work to unblock energy, chi, if you will,
right,
in our system. And we also, some people may have also heard of our energy centers in our bodies called chakras. Okay, so we're not, we kind of have a scientific component here, and we also have a spiritual component here that we're talking about. And I kind of want to stick, because this is our first conversation about energy, I want to stick to a little bit more scientific. And I'd like to talk about two other aspects of energy and how energy flows through the body, and who's studying that right now. And there is an organization called HeartMath, which I know you've heard of, Marie. And
yes,
they are studying the electromagnetic field around the heart. And what most of us have been taught in school, that the heart is constantly responding to the orders sent from the brain. That's what we've all been taught, that the brain is sort of the command center, and it's communicating with our heart and the rest of the body. But in fact, scientists are finding actually the opposite is true, that the heart is really the center of everything. It's the energy center in the body. It's this electromagnetic field around the heart is powering the heart, and it is sending signals to the brain. And when I was,
powerful.
Very powerful.
Whole different lens.
It's
a whole different lens.
It is, and it has a ton of implications.
Yes.
And I will just insert the reminder that these conversations are called the tip of the iceberg conversations,
yes,
because there are many conversations that we could have.
Of course, yes.
But this is just introductory. So when I was reminding myself about heart math, they do a lot of research that demonstrates the different patterns of heart activity, which accompany different emotional states, right? And then the effect that these emotional states have on our cognitive and emotional functioning. During stress and negative emotions, when the heart rhythm pattern is erratic and disordered, the corresponding pattern of neural signals traveling from the heart to the brain inhibits cognitive functioning, right? Now that has a lot of implications. It limits our ability to think clearly, to remember things, to learn, to reason, and to make effective decisions. So the heart's input to the brain during stressful or negative emotions has a profound effect on the brain's emotional processes, actually serving to reinforce the emotional experience of stress. So I simply sort of insert this research because heart math is really dedicated to studying energy in the body, studying the electromagnetic field around the heart, and studying how that electromagnetic field is emanating out of our body. Yes. And actually all around the world. One other thing that I wanted to bring up about them, I believe it's heart math that is involved in something called the Global Coherence Project. And that involves, again, studying energy. It involves, they have sort of electromagnetic field, EMF readers that are positioned in different parts of the world. And when a traumatic event happens, such as it might be a school shooting or a volcano eruption or 9/11 or a massive storm, these EMF readers can pick up the collective energy in the universal field.
Wow.
Which is really, really powerful. Again, and you look at the charts of this and how the energy is measured at really high levels and at low levels, depending on what's going on. So heart math is, again, I'm just breezing over this, but heart math is a wonderful organization. You can find it online, and they are doing a lot of this work around studying energy in the body, and then how the energy in the body, how we are always interacting with the universal field.
Wow, that's really powerful. It is really powerful. And the fact that, at in this time that we're all living in, that there is actually technology that can begin to capture, that can begin to measure what intuitives or people tapped into this world, or cultures that valued the energy meridians and that this as part of their way of life. It's now being captured with science too, to be able to be replicatable and shareable in the world. And it little by little is getting its message out there that we can see the invisible. We can monitor and record and measure
yes,
energy and how it's impacted by experience.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly why we're talking about that today, and I'd like to kind of the last piece of this, and again, I don't know a lot about it, but I think it's important to mention, is the work of Dwayne Elgin, and also a physicist by the name of Nassim Haramein, Haramein. Dwayne Elgin is the author of The Living Universe, and he talks about something called the toroidal field. And the toroidal field is, let's see if I have my definition here. Essentially, the toroidal field is a torus it's a self-organizing system of energy and geometry that flows through itself constantly, balanced, self-regulating, and is always whole. And that it's our hearts that have their own toroidal field around them, which emanates around us and interacts energetically with our external reality. And that toroidal field, that electromagnetic field, is electrical and magnetic in nature. And we're going to come back to why this is so incredibly important when it comes to healing the body and creating your own reality. We will come back to that. But I just want to mention those two scientists in particular because they are sort of the pioneers when talking about the toroidal field of energy around the heart.
Yes.
As well as heart mass. So they're all kind of studying the same thing. Very powerful things.
Of course, it's wonderful because they're giving us all different angles on the same bigger picture.
Right. So what does all this mean?
Really, right?
We've talked,
Right.
Some people...
How does that relate to the daily experience of people in this world?
Yes. I'm glad you asked.
Please tell us.
Well, and this is sort of my interpretation of it all when I put it all together and I practice what I practice in my life and I've seen it in action. The importance of knowing our energy field, what we're putting into our energy field and what's going out into the world. That's what's so important. So if we've got energy flowing through our body and that energy is either positive or negative, positively or negatively charged, literally charged like energy is. And what charges it? What creates a positive charge in our energy and what creates a negative charge in our energy? And I believe it has everything to do with what we think and what we expose ourselves to, which is what Emoto illustrates, right?
Exactly.
And who are we hanging out with and what are we talking about?
What are we spending our time doing and being all the time?
Right. Where are we putting our energy?
Right.
Where are we putting our thoughts? Are we focusing on illness or are we focusing on health? Are we focusing on kindness or are we focusing on cruelty?
Right. Are we spending our time in a lot of drama and complaining and suffering or struggle in some way and spending our time really thinking about that all the time? That is impacting and literally at some level creating our experience.
Well, and we know now at what level it's creating our experience because actually our thoughts are directly connected to our thoughts. We interpret our thoughts, and that interpretation drops into that toroidal field around the heart.
Right. Which is a generator.
Which is
of
a generator.
Experience.
It's a generator of energy. And that energy is positively or negatively charged.
Yes.
And then that energy is leaving our body, and it's magnetic in nature, and it's pulling into our experience whatever is energetically matched to that energy.
Yes.
So I'm going to throw one more thing at you here, Marie.
Okay. Let's do it.
Scientists believe we have about 60,000 thoughts a day.
Which is a lot.
Okay? Right. Now, we're not going to be able to manage all those thoughts. But what if 58,000 of those thoughts are negative in nature? And we now have to understand that those negative thoughts are negatively charged. That negatively charged grouping of thoughts is now contributing to a collective negative energy in the toroidal field of the heart. That negative energy is going out from our body. We can measure it with an EMF meter, and it is pulling in experiences that are a match to that energy that we're putting out.
Yes.
And that's really powerful stuff because guess what that means? That means that we have the power within ourselves to change our reality and to change our experiences.
Yes.
Because if we can change our thoughts and we can shift where we're putting our thoughts and our energy, right? Then we can change what's coming into our experience. And I don't know about you, but I would really like to live a very happy, healthy, prosperous, joy-filled life.
Yes. I think a lot of people would.
And we're very conditioned to not understand that we have the power to create that for ourselves through energy, through all of this knowledge of energy that we're talking about today. we are more conditioned to believe we are a victim of life, right? That we are a victim of our external experiences.
Right. And that there's a ceiling to how far we can go, or there's a limit to what we can change about our lives. And some people don't believe that we have any power whatsoever to change the conditions in our lives. But once we realize that there are simply a set of conditions that we were born into, and that we are literally this electromagnetic being, which is not taught in the mainstream educational systems. When you describe, Lacy, being at the doctor's office and seeing the charts, when you go to a traditional, pretty conventionally trained doctor, that's just not part of their experience. That's why you don't see it on the wall. You don't see a poster of a person's body with all their meridian points in there. You don't see necessarily at a conventional medical doctor's office, you don't see the chakras
Right.
and how they interact with the meridians.
Right.
It's just, but in other world cultures where that is part of the language, that is part of the culture, it's at least in there as a choice to look to, right? But a lot of people, especially, Western medicine, doesn't give any room for that conversation. It's just not been part of the conversation. And so, definitely in our childhoods and in our development and our experiences, we are born into a world that seems finite, and whatever you were born into is what you've got, and you got to do the best with what you've got. And it seems to be the rare individual who somehow from some amazing power inside can believe that change is possible, even if they're in difficult situations. It's been that's who we celebrate in the hero's journey. It's like one of us tapped into something amazing and became extraordinary, and the rest of us just have to accept our small little lives. And it's not really true. But these people, whether they were aware of energy at the level that Dr. Emoto understands it, at the level that Heart Math is talking about it and studying it, at the level that they're talking about it in the toroidal field and quantum physics, most people have not had access to that information. And that's when I think in our conversations, in our earlier conversations, it often takes some kind of a catalyst, that something that invites us or summons us or calls us into looking beyond the poster that the doctor has on the wall, that there might be something more out there that would more accurately reflect that change is possible, that healing is possible, that there's another way. And to me, the biggest bridge to going from the world of limits and lack and no possibility and having to accept completely what is, or resist it for most of your life, one or the other, or understanding that you are a being that is energetic in nature, you are electrical in nature, that we are attracting to ourselves through this toroidal field that we now have that language for. But we are, even if we didn't have all that language, there are people who believe they're the author of their lives. They're the creator of their lives. And the magic potion that helps that conversion process when we're moving along the journey of personal transformation is beginning to understand, or at least investigate, or at least get curious about ourselves as energetic beings that are influencing the world around us with our energy, and we're being influenced by the energy around us. And that's the beginning of starting to change your life.
Yes. Marie, I'm just, as I'm hearing you talking, I am thinking, many of our listeners know that I worked in a federal prison for 20 years. And I began teaching some of this work in federal prison in the last 7 years of my career. And I cannot even begin to describe what I witnessed in the change in the men that I worked with as they tapped into this wisdom, as they began to understand that they are energetic beings living in an energetic universe, no matter whether they were living in a prison cell, a prison cube, under a bridge, in a mansion, it doesn't matter. When they tapped into that, they got it. They changed. They worked to change their thoughts. They recognized a negative emotion and they worked to shift that. They changed who they hung out with. They changed what they talked about. They stopped cursing because they recognized that words have power. And
their lives changed.
And their lives changed.
Yes.
And their lives changed, and in miraculous ways. And so, boy, if you can do that in a prison, you can do it anywhere. And so I think that you and I are here to tell people that, we are no exception. We certainly got to a point in our life where the box that we were living in got so incredibly small that we thought it was going to suffocate us. And we had to find an alternative way to be and to think and to feel and to live.
Well, I think we've said it before, Lacy, that we literally, essentially, either had to sort of wither away and maybe even pass from this world from the level of trauma we were dealing with at one particular point in time, or we were literally almost ejected from that box. It was, they talk about sink or swim, there are situations like that. And I think, it can sort of feel scary to get ejected from the whole life and the whole world that you had believed was all that there was. And then all of a sudden, when you get beyond that box, you realize, it's so liberating.
So liberating.
To be outside of that. And I think that's also when you reference the men that you worked with for so many years. There are still some men, obviously, at that prison that did not attend some of your groups, that did not get access to this information because they just... They weren't ready. They didn't choose it. So again, every year you would put out a call, put up your poster that you're going to be leading this class. And there were many people who walked right by, either just because of their point of focus, didn't even see the poster, right, that was right next to them.
Right.
Some of them saw the poster and did, scratched their head and kept walking. But some must have had some awareness that they were in that little box themselves. Literally, they had some awareness that they were in this cell and that they were willing to be curious about, could there be another way? And I think that's the difference in some people who accept the hero's journey, who step onto that journey of personal transformation. We become willing to admit that all that we've known or what we've been taught or what we've been told or conditioned to believe may not have all the answers. And I think, certainly people who have faced a health crisis or a financial crisis, and put any kind of word and then add crisis after it. Right. Crisis is a huge teacher. It doesn't seem that way at the time. It just feels like a mess in your life. But crises have a way of inviting us to something more, and often we don't choose it unless we're in that crunch time, unless we're being squeezed in some way that we're that uncomfortable that we're willing to try on something that seems way out of the box, way out of the norm. Walk a different path than anybody else is walking right now. And the people that find their way to doing that and allow that curiosity to at least be piqued, these conversations are an invitation to people who are hanging out on the fence. Do I want something more? I'm feeling something more, but I don't know how to access something more. Some people will say, I'm just going to hang out in the world I've been in, but I'll watch that world for a little while. And some people are on the fence and they've been uncomfortable for a long time. And somebody's created a conversation, whether it's us here at Whole Soul School and Foundation, whether it's Heart Math is creating a new conversation, Dr. Emoto created a whole new level of conversation. There are many kinds of these conversations out there. There are people who are on that fence, one toe in one world and one toe in the new world, and some people are saying, I'm ready to jump. I'm ready to try something new, and if nothing else, I'm willing to at least step off this fence with a willingness to experience something new. And if it doesn't work for me, I could always move back into that old life, right?
My men used to say once they took a step towards it and they got into it, there was no going back. So,
many people find that it's you take one step and then maybe one or two steps more, and after that, the world is so big and it's so beautiful and it's so expansive that you can't help to want to get more of it and to tap into it more and more and to make your life be a living experience of that more all the time.
Yes. And, I think I'd like to sort of take what you've said and segue into we've talked about the human as an electrical being. We've talked about living in an energetic universe. We've talked about the importance of our energy field and the power that we actually have to change our energy, to shift it from negative to positive, because we want to be pulling into our experience positive experiences, positive people, things that are a vibrational match to our own positivity. So again, many more conversations can be had about techniques and how we do that. And I would invite our listeners to you can email us questions about any of this at any time, and we will work to address it. But I do want to just highlight that I think it's fair to say that we have seen a shift, at least in the last 15 years of our life, in the world of medicine to modalities, treatment modalities, and diagnostic modalities that incorporate energy and energy medicine. That yoga, there's a yoga studio on nearly every corner in Carrboro or Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and I think there is in a lot of places. There are acupuncturists now in many cities and towns, and acupuncture is now covered by most insurances. You would not have seen that 20 years ago. And then there are also a lot of other modalities out there that target the energy system of the body. So there's a woman by the name of Donna Eden who has been a pioneer of what's called energy medicine. And I encourage our listeners to look her up on the web. She gives away a lot of free information, wisdom, and techniques and how to work with your energy field. There's something called body talk that uses the body. Basically, you learn to kind of communicate intuitively with the body and get to some of the deeper issues. The body communicates to you through body talk.
Yeah, it's pretty profound.
Very profound. So there are a lot of practitioners. They're still, I think, called alternative practitioners or alternative medicine because it implies that it's alternative from the Western. But I'm not so sure that it's not all going to become pretty mainstream and may even overtake Western medicine at some point. And then, of course, there's the whole conversation about Eastern medicine and Ayurvedic medicine and naturopathic doctors and integrative medicine and homeopathic medicine. I mean, a lot of this has been around for hundreds of years.
Well, you need to make room for it. It's like, I suppose if you got a car in 1990 and, in the year 2000, 10 years later, you're excited for the new model, the new make and model, or, we're always ready to upgrade in our world today because that's our conditioning. We like new things. And we sort of upgraded our medical model when we, moved into the 19th century.
Right.
And we tried to discard in many ways the things. We threw it all out as if that was the new thing we were moving into. And there's a lot of wisdom in the ancient practices, and
Yes.
It's been around for centuries, and healing at a gentler level and working with the energy of the body to create lasting healing. And there's a place for both. There is definitely a place for both. And so, I think we just have to expand the conversation versus this one little narrow one we've been having.
Yeah. So I think that as we wrap it up, I think the biggest point I want to make, and it also will help us bring up the film that we are going to recommend for our next podcast, which is called The Secret. And The Secret is about the law of attraction. And that was a film that I don't know the statistics, but I would almost say it hit the masses. Not many of the films about alternative medicine or alternative ways of thinking in this way always hit the masses. But I think The Secret got pretty far along that path, and I think it kind of tapped on us as a humanity to say, hey, wake up, hey, remember, you have a lot more power within yourself than you realize. Yes. And I think that's why that movie, because you and I came across that movie in the heat, in the pinnacle of our own crisis. And it really served as a foundational stepping stone into something very, very different. And I'll never be more grateful for something because of that. So we'll talk more about the movie.
It was a reminder. I think that a lot of these films are trying to do that, like you said, tapping us on the shoulder. But in a way, they serve as to me, an energetic reminder in the films of what we already know, but we've forgotten. And there, these tools come into our experience, or these conversations that we're having here come into our experience to remind us that we do already know this. And if something's piquing your interest or your curiosity, there's something in there for you to help you with that remembering process.
Yeah, and I think you're talking there a lot about intuition, which we may not get to today in a full conversation, but perhaps we can add on next week or next podcast.
Yes.
Because that's a very, very important part of energy and our connection to the larger universal field and the unseen organizing forces of the universe. So
yes.
So in any case, I just want to say that we've got to remember, to our listeners, remember your thoughts have energy, have power, that you are a conduit of energy, and that energy is positively and negatively charged, and that you're sending it out into the universe, and that's pulling into your experience that which is a vibrational match. So if you can understand that sort of system that I've just described, you will start to get that you are creating your external reality through your energy field. And that's what's so important. And as we've said, many of these scientists and researchers are showing this to be true at one of those proven levels that scientists need to do. So I think that kind of wraps up our main points for today. Would you agree?
Yes, definitely. So I guess we're at that point to close out our conversation for today, but I want to thank everyone for joining us in this important conversation about energy and the law of attraction, which we are going to get more into with the film. This is the turning point for many of us, where we begin to explore with that keen interest and that curiosity the possibility that we are energy beings living in this energetic universe.
Yes.
And we begin to see the possibility, as you said, Lacy, that our thoughts, words, feelings, and overall energy that we express in the world every single day is literally creating our life experiences and the world around us. Molecules at the most minute level are listening to us. They are listening to our energy through our thoughts and feelings every day and organizing the experiences we are having or that we are soon to be summoning to us. We are thus this living energy, and so too is the universe that surrounds us. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into our Fireside Chats today. And please stay tuned. We're going to be releasing a new Transformation Talks in another week. We always release that on the 15th of the month, where Lacy will be connecting with a special guest who's going to describe his own journey and experience of energy and the magnetics of this amazing universe. And of course, we will be back on the 20th of this month with a new Fireside Chats where we discuss the film The Secret and its treasure trove of wonderful insights about energy. So thanks for joining us. I would invite everybody to please like, subscribe, and share this podcast or vlog on social media. We will include some links below in the comments section of this video or this podcast where you can connect with some of the scientists and their work that we mentioned today. We invite you to please visit our website at www.wholesoulschoolandfoundation.org and sign up to receive our newsletter and important notifications. When you sign up, you won't miss a thing, and you'll receive notifications of all the things that we're doing. And definitely visit us on Facebook to check out our reminders for the soul posts, which are just sweet inspirational messages that we post twice a week, focused on our monthly theme. And they include poems by our mystic poet, Flower Diamond, as well as quotes from the films that we discussed and any other global teachers through all time that we might find want to add some of their wisdom in our weeks. So they're really nice because they offer a little tune-up for us. They're just a little dose of some positive energy. So for people out there listening who don't have much of that in their lives, that we've created the reminders for the soul to be just that, a little reminder to help you get more energetically on track with what you really do want to be living in your life. And lastly, please consider making a donation to Whole Soul School and Foundation. You can make a one-time donation or a monthly sustainer donation to us, all of which help us to continue to provide this free content and to consciously create this pathway to greater wholeness, inspiration, positive energy, and transformation for all of our listeners. Your donations help immensely to support us in creating this new content and also in purchasing books and materials and tools for people who currently or have been affected in the past by incarceration. So many desire the support to engage the journey of personal transformation and wholeness in their own lives and simply don't have access to the uplifting resources and inspirational materials that we've been talking about today and that we talk about in our conversations together. So we thank each and every one of you who have so generously given to support our vision and mission here at Whole Soul School and Foundation. We thank you for supporting us with your positive energy, your time, your attention, and your financial gifts. So thank you, Lacy, for a great conversation today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And a huge thank you to all of our listeners and subscribers for joining us. Have a wonderful day. Blessings.